In this video, we are not going to focus on writing code. We are going to focus on system behavior. What really happens at runtime, step-by-step process, right from the start, from the event, user event, to the end UI update, that is UI render. So very first thing, we need to understand what actually exists in this system. This app has four real actor, only four real actor. So let me show you. These are the four real actor: user, browser UI, JS engine, JavaScript engine, and the external API. First, the user. The user doesn't do anything magically. Okay, this is the user. It doesn't do anything magically. They only perform actions. Whatever, click, type, scroll, whatever you do in a web application, that is the user. You are the user if you are using a web application. Second, the browser UI. The browser UI has only two responsibilities. Okay, this is the browser UI. It has only two responsibilities: collect the input, display the output. It doesn't make any decision. Then the third, the main part is the JS engine, JavaScript engine. This is a brain of the application. Okay, this is the brain of the application. All logic, all decision making live here. And the last is the external API, that is TMDB API. You can search, you will find this API. You have a free access for this API key. This is just a data source. It has no knowledge of UI or your user. Just give us the data. So this is our project demo. Okay, so this is a simple client-side project, and we will understand how browser uses our code and execute it and shows the result. So it's just a client-side application, a simple movie that we call from an external API. So it totally depends on external API. So we will see when the page loads. You can see when we load the page, this is the initial thing we can see. You can also click and Zootopia 2. You can see, you get more details. You can also search, like you just search, and we get the details of the movie. Okay, just give us the details. Now we will see how what happens on page load. Okay, what happens on page load? When the page load HTML phrase. Okay, we will see it by one simple system flow diagram, and you will clearly understand by just looking on that diagram. So this is the diagram. Okay, you can see control flow. This is green indicates the control flow that we control, user control the web. Request data, whatever we request the data from the web. We have the response data, whatever response we get from that external API. And then something went wrong, that this is the error, empty result. Okay, so what happens when page load? Okay, so we load the page. So here what happens, HTML get freeze. Very first thing, the HTML code get freeze. This HTML code get reads. After HTML content displayed, instantly CSS get loads. In that HTML we get styling, and then after JavaScript initialize, an API token is checked. As soon as JavaScript get executed, it look for an API token. If token exists, it will fetch the query. If it doesn't, then it will give us a simple error. So this was just simple when the page load. The second part we will see. So in the part 2, we will see request, response, and a UI render, how this flow work. So when JavaScript sends a request, it waits for the response. Waiting does not mean blocking. Okay, it wait for the response, but it doesn't block our app. The browser remains responsive. The UI does not freeze. Okay, the TMDB server. This is an external server. TMDB API receive the request when JavaScript sends the request, that is get HTTP. It fetches the data from its database. When it receives the request, if everything is good, it fetches the data from its database and sends back a JSON response. We get a JSON response, that is movie JSON, which contains the data that we are going to render to our browser. The response is a raw data. It cannot display directly. Okay, this response is a raw data. It does not display directly to the browser. So what happens? JavaScript engine. This is JavaScript engine. Phrase the JSON. It phrase the JSON again. It reads the JSON and phrase it. It transforms the data into a usable structure. This is where everything happens because it is the brain of this application. The UI never fetch. Okay, this is the UI. The UI will never fetch by itself. It only display what JavaScript tells it display. As I earlier told you, it just takes the input and shows the output. It has nothing to do. It is just a gateway. Take the input, shows the output. Now we will go for the third part, which is the search flow. We have seen two flow. First was when the page load initially, that second was request response flow, and the third is the search flow. Okay, and request response flow means when. Now in the third part we will see for user search flow. Okay, let's say user performance search. Okay, we have a user just type like, and this is what we get the result. So what happens here, user type into the input field, okay, as we type over here, and the event listener is triggered. In the code there is an event listener function that gets triggered. Okay, the JavaScript engine receives a signal that the user performed a action. So now what happens, user just type something that browser gets and triggered. The browser passes it to the JavaScript engine, search movie detail, search query. Okay, this is where it pass search query, it pass the to the JS engine. The input value is just a string, nothing more. Okay, the input value whatever browser pass, it's just a string, nothing more. Okay, and then UI behavior. So now what happens, JavaScript takes that string and construct a new API request, and that request passed to the external server will give the response if everything is okay. If the JavaScript, whatever it construct the API, construct it with something missing, then it will pass an error. Or if the limit has exceeded, then the external API will give an error. So there are chances of getting error. We will talk it later. New data arrives, the UI is render again. So what happens here is that in JSON, when it gets a new data, and same as earlier, new data is placed the data and render to the UI. UI will just print it. User will just see the result. Now we will see model details flow. What it part contain, part 4. Okay, it's like this. This is the card, we click and we get the detail of that movie. So same as the user do something, browser get it, browser pass it, JavaScript just construct a new API request, it pass to the external API give the response, that response get phrase and construct in usable components, and then it renders to the, means it sends to the browser just render it and shows the result. This is the flow for detail movie. Okay, movies detail. Now the part 5 we will see control flow and data flow. This is very important. Control flow versus data flow. What does this means? This is the important part of this explanation. So in this control flow versus data flow, just look at this diagram. Okay, what definition says is that control flow is about who calls whom. Means control flow is about who calls whom in a simple language, and a data flow is about what is being passed. Okay, so if the button does nothing, the control flow is broken. Okay, what it says is that this is the user. Okay, user do something, click to the button, like, okay, click to this button, and if this button does nothing, okay, the button does nothing, button doesn't work. Hence, even if I type it and click and nothing happens, then what happened here is that control get broke, because button didn't call anyone. User called it, but button just broke it. And if the UI shows undefined, then there is no data, and if there is no data, then the data flow is broke. Simply user pass it, everything's go well, but here external API just rejected your request and you get no data. If you get no data, the data will show an error, the app will show an error, and this will be considered as data flow. It's get broke. Okay, and why I'm explaining what is data flow and what is control flow is that when you understand the data flow and control flow, debugging get very easier when you separate these two. If you see here, what are the possibilities for the control flow versus data flow? So very first possibility is that we type something and we click, then to nothing happens. That means control flow is broke. And if we click on this and then to nothing happens, that means control flow is broke. This is the control flow, okay, which get broke. So in simple technical language, if I say control flow, in the control flow, choose which function run next. Like if there is a button, we click, okay. So and handle search, search button, handle search function get triggered, and that handle search function will tell that this function should run, fetch movie. Okay. So that function will run. That function will tell this function should run. That is what control flow. But in data flow, when you type something like you type Batman, that Batman will get passed to the API, then returns the JSON response, and then HTML renders it. That is the data flow. Means the data is what those functions pass to each other. Means control is the function and the data is the value of that function. What that function pass, what that function get as the value, that we call as parameter. One function, when the function pass the value, we say it as argument, and when the function receive the value, we say it as parameter. So finally, if I say if the app does nothing, okay, if this app does nothing, even we click here, we click here, we click here, we do everything, but app does nothing the way we want. It does nothing, means the UI just stayed the way it was. That is control flow. But if we click and we get an error, we get the data but not what we want. That's the data flow. Means it's for broke control flow, broke data flow. But when by looking at the diagram, we can now we can say how the system works. So we know how the system works. It just data flow from here to here, in here, then it came with an error, then go this way, then go this. This is how the system flow actually works. I know this is a may look a simple application, but the flow is a real world flow for an get request application. That means the application that just reads the data. For that, this is the architecture we see. And now when you understand system behavior, writing code became much easier. Even when you write code, when you understand the system, you get where is the error, and if you understand what is the error, then you definitely can make that project outstand and didn't trap in the loop of error, error, error. Get out of that trap. In the next video, we will apply the same thing to the more complex system. If you like this explanation, just comment it out and give me some advice that where I can improve myself. And that's it for now. Meet you in the next video. Also, if you want the code, so you can just get into the description. There is a link in the description for my Git repo, and also the flow. This flow is not just made by an app or anything. It's just made by an HTML code, and it's like responsive. You can see responsive. It is responsive. So that is for now. We will talk in the next video. So that's for all.